We continue to follow the latest out of South Florida at this hour. Former President Trump is set to be arraigned inside a federal courtroom within hours. The former president arrived in Miami on Monday ahead of today's court appearance. He is facing 37 counts related to the documents seized by the FBI last year from his Mar-a-Lago residence. We've also learned that Trump is expected to plead not guilty to the charges. Joining me now to talk more about it, NewsNation political editor Chris Stirewalt. Chris, always good to see you. People were critical of the charges in New York and that case brought against him in Manhattan. The indictment in Florida, though, seems much different if you ask anybody who went to law school. Why?
Well, in New York, what the district attorney pretty clearly did was facing political pressure of his own, sort of bootstrapped his way into these charges against the former president, and even people who would delight at the thought of Donald Trump behind bars had to admit that it was a bit of a reach. In this case, I think there was a sort of an autonomic response inside the Republican Party's system where they heard the indictment was coming and Republicans came out and said, this is the politicized, weaponized Justice Department and all of the talking points that they were accustomed to. Then when the charges came out, and we heard from former Attorney General Bill Barr, a guy who had really taken Trump's side during the probe into alleged Russian collusion and other matters, saying to his fellow Republicans, this is really serious stuff. And what you saw reflected on the campaign trail yesterday from Nikki Haley, from Tim Scott, from Chris Christie, and now increasingly from Ron DeSantis is this is a big deal, and whatever you think about what happened to Hillary Clinton or didn't happen to Hillary Clinton, or whatever you think about Hunter Biden, this is a serious issue.
Right, and there are very specific details, which is why it leads Bill Barr to say something like that. Notes in the indictment, there are audio recordings, nuclear secrets, information that was shared. It gets very specific. I want you to hear what Anthony Scaramucci told Chris Cuomo last night about the indictment and the charges.
He does not like this. He is stressed about it. And I am going to say something contrarian on your show. I think he ends up eventually dropping out of the race. And I think he ends up coming up with some type of Spiro Agnew-like plea where he's out, doesn't go to jail. Something happens to him, but not too significant. And I don't think he makes it to the Iowa caucus.
Chris, hard to see a scenario where Donald Trump would drop out of the race. What do you think?
I mean, it's non-crazy. It's not it is an open question as we sit here today, whether or not Donald Trump will be in this race at the end of this year. A lot of things will happen, but this indictment has introduced the possibility that that could be so, because the truth for Trump is right now the rally around the flag effect is helping Trump maintain his dominant share of the Republican electorate. There's no question about that. And he's been at basically half of the Republican Party, had the support of about half the Republican Party since the Alvin Bragg indictments in New York. Over time, though, Republicans have a choice to make, which is this person the best person to put up against Joe Biden? And is somebody who took these risks, who exposed himself to this kind of prosecution, is this the right choice going forward? For a big chunk of Republicans, for a ton of them, let's say a third of the Republican Party, it will always be Trump. They love Trump. They believe that he is the one. He is their Godzilla who will come and smash the opposition. But for the rest of the party, the idea of nominating somebody who is being prosecuted or has been convicted will seem increasingly far-fetched, I imagine.
People will be watching the events of today very closely. They'll also be watching Trump's speech later tonight at Bedminster. How important is it knowing how difficult it will be for him to stick to a script that he does, given that anything he says tonight and moving forward could be used against him in this case?
Well, on the one hand, he's done pretty well in dealing with the gag order that was imposed on him in New York criminal court. He hasn't really run afoul of that, apparently, too much. On the other hand, there are very low expectations for Trump in terms of sticking to the prompter. Everybody knows to take even his greatest supporters would take his words with a lot of salt. So I think that what I'm going to look for this evening, what I want to hear tonight, what I want to see is, does he introduce notes of caution. And if he does introduce notes of caution, if he is in any way subdued, if he is in any way less ferocious than he usually is, that could point to what Mr. Scaramucci was talking about, which is this is a serious matter. It's a real drag, and you can't find enough lawyers who are patootie kissers to gather around yourself to tell you everything's going to be okay, because even the worst hack in the courthouse would tell you this is serious stuff.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.